Amelia and let's talk about books. Today is going to be a review on Sarah J Maas's new book, A Court of Silver Flames, the new installment in the ACOTAR series. In this book, we follow Nesta Archeron, Feyre's sister, after what happens in A Court of Frost and Starlight, which was the last book. We've been waiting for this book for a long time. It's been like 2 or 3 years since Sarah J Maas announced that she was gonna make a book around Nesta. Ever since I read A Court of Thorns and Roses, I had a difficult relationship with Nesta. I thought she was a difficult character. I think at the time I was not fully aware of the complexity of her character. Because we were on Feyre's point of view the whole time, it was hard to really create a different opinion than hers. She was a very harsh character. She was very cold and very straightforward. I think for most people, when we start reading this series, it's hard to really relate to her in a way, because we see her as not the villain, but really someone that let her sister go out and hurt herself and hunt for them and not try to help. Throughout the years, as the rest of the books came out and we could see different facets of her as a character, as a sister, as just a woman, I think it's safe to say that she's one of the most complicated characters that we've seen so far. I'm really glad that Sarah J Maas decided to make a book around her and to see really what she felt rather than what others see of her. So in this book we follow her, and we can see from the last book that she was very depressed, that she was dealing with a lot of anxiety from the war. We also learn that she has powers and that she's been trying to manage them and know how to control them with the help of Amren. So in the beginning of A Court of Silver Flames, we follow that same path. She's in the same place mentally. She's just struggling with a lot of things in her mind, and she's just completely shut off from everybody else. She's drinking, she's having sex with whoever she wants, and that's not a bad thing. But even from the reader's point of view, I think from anyone's point of view, we can see that she's going through a hard time and that what she's doing is a very toxic behavior that will definitely damage her in the future. This book was definitely better in terms of politics. It was very hard for me to focus during ACOTAR in the politics. I think the ACOTAR series were not really about politics. I think all I knew was that there was a war coming, the basics of it. I think Sarah did a better job of really engaging the reader in what's going on with this after-war politics and ambiance and just weather in the country. We know the Fae are preparing in case there's another war. We also know that the queens in the human land that didn't help them when they were fighting against Hybern are trying to plot against them, and they're trying to retrieve these really powerful and ancient old magic items that I think are as old and as powerful as the cauldron itself. So I think it was a very thick and interesting plot. It was not heavy that you would get bored because it was just too much, and it wasn't light enough that you would get bored because it wasn't really enough. So I can say I really liked the journey that Nesta goes through in this book. Every single new character that appeared was very well made. I really liked them. I had a really nice relationship with them. I felt it was really necessary. They didn't feel like characters that she just created to make a point or to just throw in there and not have to bring the others. They were really necessary, and I really love what she did with them. I also love what she did with Nesta and Caitian. It was a relationship that we saw going from miles away, and we knew it was coming, something from them. And I'm really happy that they got a book of just exploring what this relationship could be like, and also not to stifle Nesta's journey with this new sort of awareness of Caitian as more than a person or more than a friend or more than anything else. There were a lot of clues in the last books about them together, and they were very strong and really there. Like, she was willing to die for him several times, and he was just as willing. And their journey, their friendship, it's just so beautiful in this book. I can say 100% that I really like this book a lot more than the last two. I think it was a very interesting, very compact, even when it's really big, a really huge book. It didn't feel like it, and I really just want to keep reading. It was really interesting seeing the beginning of the book, how Nesta is in such a bad place mentally and physically too. She just doesn't care at all. I didn't think that she would be such a relatable character to the point that it hurt to see her like that. And not just because we know her and we just have human decency to feel bad for her, but because the struggles that she's going through are very real. Not only the anxiety and the depression, but the feelings of just wanting to make things right with the people that you love and that you know that care about you, but having these insecurities of not, you're just ruining everything, you are nothing, you are bad. Nesta just keeps saying the wrong things all the time, even though she doesn't want to. She knows what words will exactly hurt the people that she loves, and she just says them because she's afraid that they would hurt her instead. So she's very like, I'm gonna throw the first rock so just they don't hit at me. And it's a very toxic trait, a very toxic mentality, but I think at some point, even just in a minimum way, we've all been there of trying to protect ourselves and being like, you know, you suck, fuck you, even if we don't mean that at some point or in a way. Nesta is sent to the House of Wind, which is one of the many houses that they have, and she is forced to train and to work in a library, the library that resides under the house. It felt wrong, but it was right at the same time. As a character, as being on Nesta's point of view, you can feel, you know, not wanting to be forced to do anything, especially when one of your trauma is that you were forced into a culture and turned into something that you didn't want to. Seeing her struggle through that of being forced again to do something and to live a life that she didn't want to was hard. But at the same time, I knew it was the right thing to do. When you see someone that you love being in such a bad place, you just want to help them, and you're willing to force them to do it because you just can't stand it and you know that they're gonna hurt themselves. It was definitely what she needed. Maybe it was not the right way, but I think as human beings we can understand their parts. It was very interesting seeing Nesta's point of view in what happened in the last books, how she describes her relationships with Feyre and with Elaine and with Risen, which we know that she absolutely hates at the beginning, and Caitian, how she sees him and how she deals with all these relationships and tries to help herself and not getting hurt. At the beginning, as was expected, Nesta is adamant to not listen to what her family wants from her and how they want to help her. She moves to the house and begins training, which at first she completely doesn't do because she's just that type of girl. It was very interesting seeing her struggle with that. Like, I know they're doing this for me, and I see Caitian trying to do what's best for me too, and he's trying to help me. And because they're in the Illyrian camp, they're these awful men and they're very sexist, and the things that they say really made me want to just... She knows that she's making a fool of Caitian by refusing to train, and she wants that not to happen. Like, she wants to do it for him so he doesn't look bad, but she just can't because she's just so stubborn. It was also interesting seeing the library. I didn't remember much about the library, just that there was this beast that lived on the deepest floor, and that was very terrifying. And we're reminded of certain things that happened in the last book. I just completely forgot about the people that live there and work there. You know, we get to see all these priestesses that work there and that have very different and difficult paths. It was really nice to see that Moore and Rysand made this place for them and gave them this to have a future, to work with their trauma and have a sort of haven. It was also interesting to see Nesta's point of view and talking about Recent. I love Recent. I think he was one of the best characters in Akamath and Akawar. It was very interesting, and I think it was the type of lead romance interest that we wanted in YA. I just didn't agree with a lot of things that he did in the last two books, especially the last book, because I think it's understandable. You know, when you love someone, you just hate to see the people that hurt them in any sort of way. And because you're Faye and because Feyre is his mate, it's understandable that he just really resents more fiercely this hurt that Nesta put her sister through. At the same time, it was something that he just didn't have to have a part in. It was the relationship of Feyre and Nesta, and he just had no business getting in there. And just seeing her from her point of view, or having this power dynamic of I'm the best and like I fear you, but I'm not gonna yield to you. I won't. And I liked seeing a part of a character that I didn't like. It's a very, I think for me, and I hope that for many of you, it's very important to be reminded that characters are not supposed to be perfect. I hate perfect characters. Like, I can't stand them right now because I realize how flawed humans are, and it's just bullshit to see perfect characters. I like seeing them making mistakes, just like Recent had no business in Nessa's and Feyre's relationship, how he had no business doing some things to Moore in the last books. But I also like seeing him being a total lovable fucker to Feyre and protecting his family. I really like Occasion and Nessa's dynamic. We knew from the moment that they met that it was going to be a very clashing, powerful couple. At the beginning, it's very just bickering at each other, but in a not respectful way, but it was, I think, with less hate than the first time that we see Feyre and Recent. Listen, when Sarah J. Maas said, I'm gonna write filth, she wrote filth. I was fawning myself reading this book. I'm really glad that they moved to new adult this series, because they definitely didn't belong in the YA section. And I don't think it's anything wrong with having saucy, sexy scenes in YA. I just think it's weird for grown people to write about teenagers fucking. So it was really a great step to move this series to a more adult audience. I also really liked Israel's involvement in these books, because everyone knows how things can get between Caitian and Nesta. He's sent to the House of Wen to be their chaperone, which he fails at. Let's put it like that. I think in the first books and just in the whole series, we don't get to see him as much. He was always an interesting character. I really was like drawn to his thing, like with the shadows, and that he's a shadow singer and that he's very powerful, but he has a very dark past. And it was obvious that he was very drawn to Elaine, and there was a scene with Moore and everything, but we never got to see him really be himself. I'm not saying that he's like in all the book all the time. I could sense the difference between the Israel that we see in these books. Like, I think because he spends more time with Caitian, that we get to see more of this aunt than what we saw with Recent in the books. So that was lovely. I'm very excited for anything that Sarah J. Maas has coming from his character, because I really want to know more about him and what's gonna happen, and if he goes with Elaine, and it was very hinted, so let's see what happens. I also liked Elaine. Speaking of, at the beginning of the book, Nesta explains how she is the one that really completely settled into the Fae world. She's doing better than she originally was, and because of that, her relationship with Feyre kind of grew a little bit more, and they're more like close together, and that puts Nesta in a really bad place too, because she just feels like everyone's leaving her out, even though she's also shutting herself out, and she just keeps going farther away because she feels like these people that used to love me or that I used to be close with, like Elaine, just do not want me anymore. Like, she just changed me. Like, she chose Feyre over me, and that just hurts her, so she just completely forgets about them. We get to know two new characters, a priestess that works at the library where Nesta is currently working, called Winlin, I think so. I suck at these pronunciations. Her story, I was crying at the end of the book because we learn more about the story of her and how she's linked to Azrael because he saved her. We also meet Emery, who is a store owner in one of the small towns that are around the Illyrian camp. So she meets her and she's an Illyrian too. Like, she has wings, but she was clipped, so they are completely damaged and she can fly. The friendships that Nesta begins to make are just so pure and so refreshing and so powerful, in a way that they all have been through very difficult things and they have all been through so much and they are hurting inside so much that this friendship brings them all hope, because they all feel left out from the world that they knew, and being together will make them feel braver about what's outside. I'm really glad that Sarah J. Maas did this to Nesta. Like, she was always talking about how Fira found her own chosen family, and it was very sweet and nice saying that Nesta got one of her own. One of the things that I didn't like about this book was how the mating bond between Nesta and Kishin is dealt with. I really thought that the bond had settled because of one thing that happens in Akawar, but it hadn't. But we knew that it was there. Like, everyone knew that mating bond was there. I guess I understand why Sarah did that. Like, why it was not as much as a deal as it was for Feasant. I guess I just wanted something that big and that powerful for Nesta. I'm not saying their love, their relationship, how it gradually grows and goes from friendship to more and stuff like that isn't as powerful or as lovely. I just wanted something to match her greatness. Besides the political and internal struggles that Nesta is dealing with, we also find out that Fira is pregnant, and that is a very risky pregnancy. We'll learn more about Illyrians and how they have these different rituals and training stuff. Besides the struggles of anxiety and depression that she's dealing with, we can also learn and see that Nesta is dealing with the loss of her father, that how she feels guilty about it because she was in such a rage with him when he died. Everything that goes through Nesta's mind, it was really hard to live with because they were so real, like feelings so real, that I think I understand why Sarah said that even though the things that happened to Nesta didn't happen to her, but it was still hard to read about having this kind of thoughts. So I imagined how hard it must have been to write about them. So through it all, I can say that it was a very entertaining book. It had the perfect combination of everything. We had a lot of both, a lot of really nice, powerful scenes. We had really a lot of romance and political plots and magical plots. We really get to see Nesta grow a lot, and it's not an easy path that she goes through. Like, she does a lot of things that even as a reader I was like, oh, she fucked up. She fucked up. It was nice to see her not going through like a line of bad and good. It was a lot of struggle in between, like a lot of downs and ups, and just going back to really toxic behaviors that she was just not good with and that she just didn't want to have, but that she just couldn't help but let out. So I'm really happy about this book. I just didn't imagine that I would love it as much. I'm so glad that Sarah had opportunity to tell us more about Nesta. She was a character that I was not fond of at the beginning of the series. I didn't hate her. I just didn't like the things that she did to Feyre, I guess, because I'm the smallest child in my family, so I wouldn't want my siblings to treat me that way. But I also can understand her, and she became one of my favorite characters in the series, and her relationship with Keishan too. And I think this book did a wonderful job of creating a really good point of view of her and her character and the things that she went through. It really got me excited to learn more about these books and about this world and about the rest of the characters. Like, I know there's an Elaine book, and I know it's going to be focused on Israel too, because we can see the sparks fly there. I'm also very interested to see what she's going to do with Lucian's and Elaine's mate bond, which she just doesn't want. From the beginning, when she introduces to mate bonds, it was very interesting and it was wonderful and beautiful. But it also raised the question: what happens when someone just doesn't want that bond? And so we're gonna see what happens in Elaine's book, and I hope it comes out sooner than this one came, because it was a very long wait for this one, but it was definitely worth the wait. I've heard so many mixed reviews about this book, but I can say that I really liked it. If you already read it, what do you think? Please let me know in the comments. I'm gonna leave you my socials, my Twitter, my Instagram, and my Goodreads. Here I rant, here I post pictures, and here you can see what I'm reading. I'm gonna leave the links down below. If you like this video, please hit the thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell button for more of me and my books. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.